In 2005, to mark the 100th anniversary of Chinese filmmaking, the Hong Kong Film Critics Association sponsored a vote on the best Chinese films of the past 100 years. Fei Mu's Spring in a Small Town was voted number 1. Spring in a Small Town tells the story of 5 people in a small town in southern China, reuniting in the aftermath of a war. These people are coping with loss and undecided about what to do next. What is it about this modest film, released to a very mixed reception during the Chinese Civil War, that has led it to being regarded as perhaps the most classic film in Chinese cinema history? In this module, we will focus on Fei Mu's film as an artistic and a historical landmark, examining both its politics and its artistry. First, a little bit about the director. Fei Mu had a background in the theater world and had directed earlier films including several anti-Japanese propaganda films during the war. Besides Spring in a Small Town, or 小城之春, one of his major accomplishments as a filmmaker was his collaboration with Melancholy, a Peking opera performer who specialized in female roles. The Wedding in the Dream, 生死恨, is China's first full-length color film, and it consists of a stage performance by Mei, who was one of the most famous Chinese cultural figures of the first half of the 20th century. Spring in a Small Town, which involves only 5 people in one place over a limited period of time, also seems to reflect Fei Mu's theater background. It's like a stage play with a small cast. As events unfold, the intimacy of the setup also starts to seem claustrophobic, especially as the scenes move into nocturnal settings and the emotional intensity of the drama ratchets up. Spring in a Small Town was written under Fei Mu's tutelage by a screenwriting novice, a young actor in his 20s named Li Tianji. In 1947, while he was writing Spring in a Small Town, Li Tianji appeared in Diary of a Homecoming, 还乡日记. Diary of a Homecoming, along with An Ideal Son-in-Law, or 成龙快婿from 1947, was one of several late 1940s films set in the present day that dealt with the theme of people dealing with the aftermath of the anti-Japanese war. Li Tianji also went on to appear as the sinister Kuomintang, or nationalist officer, who, along with his mistress, terrorizes the residents of a Shanghai apartment building in Crows and Sparrows, another classic film from 1949. Spring in a Small Town shares with these films a theme of post-war disappointment, and even shares with Diary of a Homecoming the striking image of a man jumping through a hole in the wall. But its mood is melancholic and its tone lyrical. Before we talk about some of these details, here's a recap of the story. The anti-Japanese war has just ended, and China is in ruins. Dai Liyan, the head of the Dai family, lives in a small town in the south with his wife Zhou Yuwen, his teenage sister Dai Xiu, and a family servant, old Huang. The marriage is an unhappy one, and Yuwen spends much of her free time wandering on the city wall, while Liyan spends his time trying to repair the Dai family compound, which has been bombed by the Japanese. One day, his old friend Zhang Zhichen, a doctor who has been working in the interior during the war, arrives. Zhichen's joy at the reunion is tempered, however, by his discovery that Liyan is married to his old flame. He and Yuwen were in love once and had even planned to get married. The flame in their relationship now starts to rekindle. Dai Liyan also has a younger sister, Dai Xiu, a teenager who is more optimistic than her melancholic older brother. She too takes a fancy to Zhichen, and amidst the happiness of reunion, tensions start to develop within this group. Liyan is suffering from illness, which Zhichen diagnoses as tuberculosis, but which Yuwen attributes to neurosis. Liyan confides to Zhichen that his marriage is in trouble. He and Yuwen have been sleeping in separate rooms for a long time. Zhichen encourages his friend to get outside more and get more fresh air. But when they do group excursions together, these just serve to bring Zhichen and Yuwen closer together. During a drinking party on the night of Dai Xiu's 16th birthday, things get out of control, and Yuwen and Zhichen's mutual attraction becomes evident to Liyan, who retreats in dismay. After the party, Yuwen makes her way to Zhichen's room, where they come close to consummating their passion. But Zhichen leaves the room and locks Yuwen inside. She breaks a window, cutting her hand, and he rushes back inside to treat her. Shocked into sobriety, Yuwen goes back to her own room, but neither she nor Zhichen can sleep that night. The next day, Lian tries to commit suicide with sleeping pills. He survives, but the incident persuades Zhichen to leave and Yuwen to stay with her husband. In the final scene, Daxiu and Old Huang take Zhichen back to the train station, while Yuwen stands on the city wall with Lian and points into the distance, and perhaps to their future together. We begin on a wall. In the first scene of the film, beginning even during the credits, Yuwen walks alone on an old city wall, thinking anxiously about her life and her future. She reflects that she lives a monotonous life in this small town. These words turn the wall into more than just a setting. It seems to symbolize her character's uncertainty and hesitation. She is literally on the brink, standing on a barrier that separates inside from outside. This city wall was originally a defensive fortification, presumably a defense against attack from the outside. But it has fallen into disrepair and is overgrown with weeds. Yuwen, too, is feeling down. Walls also help to define the mental and physical state of Yuwen's husband, Dai Lian. When we first see Lian, he is trying in vain to repair a hole in the wall of his home, laboriously stacking brick upon brick. But the hole in the wall is bigger than he is, and he's in poor health, so we doubt that he'll ever repair it fully. When Zhang Zhichen arrives in town, he makes his way directly to the rear entrance of the Dai family compound, which he knows well from childhood, and he climbs through the hole in the wall to greet his old friend. The moment is fraught with symbolism. Zhichen's dramatic entrance suggests his energy, his health, and his enthusiasm. He literally climbs through the gap that Lian has been trying to repair on his own. The action makes us wonder, will this charismatic and energetic figure be able to actually fill the gap for this family? Later we see other walls and barriers within the Dai family household. These include walls, doors, and windows made of both paper and glass. When Lian is lying in bed, he is often literally overshadowed by light shining through the paper windows, which cast shadows on the wall. At one of the climaxes in the film, following the drunken revelry of Daxiu's birthday party, Yuwen tries to visit Zhichen in the study that has been converted into his bedroom. Zhichen tries to keep Yuwen out, but she forces her way in. After a moment's hesitation, when he picks her up in his arms and seems ready to consummate their passion, he stops and goes outside, locking Yuwen in the room. In desperation, she punches through the glass in the door and tries to open it using the handle on the outside. But in doing so, she cuts her hand, which prompts Zhichen to come back inside and bandage her wound. At this dramatic moment, Yuwen breaks through a barrier and experiences trauma in doing so. Though Zhichen bandages her hand, he cannot repair the wound, and the moment symbolizes the beginning of their separation. Part of what is arresting and compelling about Fei Mu's film is, of course, what we see on screen. So let's focus in a little bit more on mise-en-scène, meaning what appears in front of the camera. An important part of Fei Mu's mise-en-scène is a concentric structure of walls within walls and barriers within barriers. We have the city wall, the wall to the family compound, and the walls between rooms. These barriers symbolize, among other things, the divisions and distances between the characters. Yet a wall is not just a barrier. For example, during one of their explorations together, Daxiu tells Zhichen that to her, the city wall is like a road which one will never finish walking, one that might lead to her future. Indeed, at the end of the film, the estranged couple Lian and Yuwen stand on the wall and look to their future together. Like walls and barriers, other visual motifs have symbolic resonance with the psychological and emotional states of the characters. When Zhichen is getting ready for bed during his first night in the converted study, Yuwen visits him, ostensibly to deliver bedding and a thermos of hot water, and they have a conversation in the room. The scene has a very stagey quality to it, perhaps influenced by Fei Mu's background as a theater director. The mise-en-scène is bare, like a stage, with only a few props on the set. A painting on the wall, a light bulb hanging from the ceiling, a thermos on the table, and a candle. The tension between the two characters is palpable. In her hands, Yuan holds a handkerchief which she twists and fidgets with. The conversation is formal, stilted, and halting. At one point, Zhichen leans towards Yuan and puts his hands on the thermos she had delivered to him. A thermos is an object that is cold on the outside but hot on the inside, and this seems suggestive of the passion beneath the surface between these two characters. The electricity is about to go out, as it does every night due to energy-saving measures, and Yuan lights a candle for Zhichen. The gesture to me seems to symbolize her interest in rekindling their relationship. All of her fiddling with the light switch, too, suggests that she will take the initiative in what follows. Even the bare light bulb that hangs above them seems to symbolize that for all that is left unspoken in the scene, it has laid passions bare. We've talked a little bit about image, now let's talk about sound. One of the distinctive filmmaking techniques used in Spring in a Small Town is Yuan's voiceover. She tells us her thoughts and feelings, and we can hear her uncertainty even in the tenor of her voice. The sound of her voice, speaking directly to us, turns us into her confidants and brings us inside her mind. Her voice is very close-mic'd, so we can hear her words distinctly. It's also significant, I think, that the narrator is female, and that we hear about events from a feminine perspective. In the context of both Chinese narrative and Chinese filmmaking, this was a major innovation. The long-suffering wife is a very familiar trope in Chinese literature, but here we literally get to hear her voice. She remembers a romantic past and tells us about her sufferings in her present marriage. Above all, this sound tells us that this is Yuan's story. Let's take a closer look at the scene in which Zhichen joins the three family members for a boating excursion in the countryside. What we see and hear in this sequence reveals a lot about Fei Mu's filmmaking style. All four characters are literally in one boat. They're even closer together and in more confined quarters than they were in the earlier nighttime scene of Daxiu singing for everyone in Lian's bedroom. We see them in a series of shots at long, middle, and close-up distance that reveal symbolic blocking. Lian and Daxiu sit in front facing the camera, while the erstwhile lovers Yuan and Zhichen are in the back, where the two in front can't see them. We have a shot linking the two former lovers, beginning with Yuan, who looks back at Zhichen, who keeps his eyes fixed straight ahead as if he's trying hard not to look at her. Fei Mu makes a choice here not to cut between the two characters, dividing them into separate shots, but rather to link them together into one space. The sound that we hear of the brother and sister up front singing together happily, this rare opportunity for recreation, also reminds us of their presence and puts into relief the mute struggle going on behind them. Next to Lian and Daxiu's happiness, the expressions on the faces of the other two characters highlights their anxiety and their discomfort about this shared secret.